Am I the only person who can't hear anything?
Don't
Must
know.
be. I can hear.
We're live.
Okay, good morning. This is Chatham Historical Commission, February 1st, 2022 meeting. First thing we have to do is go through a little business. This meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please let me know. Anything? This meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission is being conducted in person and via remote participation in accordance with Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 and shall afford adequate alternative means of public access via Microsoft Teams by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 672-958-469 hashtag, or by joining the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access, and we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue, hearing, or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair. First step after that is the roll call. Chairman Frank Messina, I gather, is not present, which is why I'm doing this. Steve Burlingham. Steve?
You're muted, Steve.
I see you.
You're
Doesn't say he's muted.
having breakfast.
Well, I see him, therefore. Ben Smolinski.
Here.
Stephanie Hamilton.
See, Steph.
Do we know anything about Stephanie?
Bob, I know that she was going to, I'm not really sure of the dates.
Bob, it's Michelle.
could
Can you
be.
hear me?
We can hear you.
Bob, can you hear me? It's Michelle.
Yes, I can.
Can
Oh,
anybody hear me? Or just put up your hand if you can.
We
can hear
for
you.
a while, but
We can't hear
now we
you.
did.
Bob, it's Michelle. I understand that Stephanie was having some problems with her telephone. I'm not sure if that has something to do with her internet. We emailed this morning. She did not mention she was not going to attend the meeting, so I'm not really sure.
Okay. We'll see if she checks in. Jane is here. Don Aikman.
Here?
Sandy.
Present. Hey, Bob, can you
Janet?
speak up? Can you speak up just a little?
I can try this. I'm on my lap or my iPad because my computer refuses to go to Teams. So.
Ah, okay.
Yes, I will.
Thank
I don't know
you.
where the microphone is in this thing. So.
Thank
All
you.
right. The first order of business. I guess at the moment, both of you alternates will be voting. Let's get some more people showing up. The first order of business is community input session regarding the historic incentive draft zoning bylaw. Allie is here to give us a brief run through of that. Just by way of background, the commission has had a number of meetings on this subject, shared this proposed bylaw with the various other town entities, the zoning board, the planning board, and we're doing a public input session to gather some hopefully final information and be able to present this to the select board, who can then, if they agree, pass it off to the planning board. So, Allie, why don't you give us a summary, a rundown of what this proposed bylaw is all about?
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen with a PowerPoint, so just give me 1 second while I pull it up. Okay. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes, I can.
Yes. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. So this is a community input session, so we're hoping to hear feedback from the community on this proposed draft historic preservation incentive zoning bylaw. So I'm just going to run quickly through the bylaw through this PowerPoint, and at the end, I believe the chair will open it up for any community input. So what is the purpose of this bylaw? The Historical Commission really wanted to create a bylaw that had permitting flexibility of dimensional requirements that might be impediment to historic preservation. They did this with the hope of encouraging preservation of buildings, structures, sites, and settings of historical or archaeological significance by allowing buildings to remain in place. And I'll go through this purpose throughout the slide. So we'll get into more detail on that a little bit later. So what is the applicability? So this is for all eligible historic buildings that are in all zoning districts. And I'll get into in more detail what an eligible historic building is as we go through the slideshow. So what is the definition of the eligible historic building? Any building or structure that is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, is listed on the State Register of Historic Places, or has been designated by the Chatham Historical Commission to be historically significant building. So those are all of the eligible historic buildings that would be eligible for this proposed bylaw. So this is a map. It shows obviously the town of Chatham, and it does show in the darker blues, and it might be a little difficult to see, and if so, I can pull it up in a different way. But it does show in the blue the potential areas that this zoning incentive could apply for. And the number of potential parcels that it could are a little over 700 potential properties that this incentive could apply for. So special permit granting priority. So in this proposed bylaw, the Historical Commission really wanted to show that the priority for this bylaw is for buildings that are being kept in place, structures that are being placed on site. However, they do realize, we did realize through discussions and review that, potentially historic structures can be moved off of site, and we want to make sure that this incentive is allowing for that. So we do say that the priority for this incentive is for this historic structure to remain on site. However, we do allow this incentive to travel with a historic structure if an application is presented for that. But again, the priority is keeping the historic structure on site. And we really wanted to, as we were going through the bylaw, we really wanted to think about some potential loopholes that could happen, and we wanted to close them. And so that's the second section here, the second bullet here. And so when the historic building is removed from the site, the incentive, as I said, can be transferred to the new sitting lot where the historic building is placed. But any such incentive is not available to the original lot. So that means if this historic house is moved off site with the incentive going with that historic structure, the original lot that was on would not be available to allow these incentives. So we really wanted to, like I said, close those loopholes. So the first incentive that we're proposing here, so it's following waivers for regulatory flexibility to eligible historic buildings for relief from dimensional standards. So the first one is building coverage. The Zoning Board of Appeals may, by special permit, waive building coverage requirements to incentivize the reuse of historic structures. So the building calculation as follows. The maximum by right building coverage allowed under our bylaw multiplied by a factor of no greater than 1.25. So what does that mean? I have some specific numbers here to help it kind of put into a perspective. So for a 20,000 square foot lot, the current building coverage by right, so that's what's allowed right now, is 2,800 square feet. With this incentive, it would allow an additional 700 square feet of building coverage to bring it up to 3,500 square feet. I'll just skip down. So 30,000 square foot lot, right now the building coverage is by right, so what's allowed right now is 3,000 square feet. And through this incentive, it would allow an additional 750 square feet to bring it up to 3,750 square feet. And we really wanted to make sure that there was a range. So the smaller lots, you wouldn't have as much building cover, additional building coverage. And then as the lots get larger, you would have an increase in the allowed building coverage. So that is the first incentive proposed. The second one is building setbacks. So again, this is through the Zoning Board of Appeals, may by special permit waive the abutter setback requirement in all zoning districts of up to 1/2 the minimum required setback in the zoning district, but in no case less than 5 feet. So that is the second proposed incentive through this bylaw. So again, this is just a description of how this could potentially work. So the top section of this slide shows by right building coverage if historic building is not preserved. So that's the blue picture that you see here. And you can see this is just, it would be a 40,000 square foot lot. It would be what's by right now. And then the second row right here with the pink shows the by right building coverage. So that's that white building. And then if we would allow, through this incentive, if you would allow an additional building coverage, and that is the pink. So you can see different ways that that could potentially occur. So the special permit process. Prior to the initiation of the special permit procedures, the Historical Commission shall make a determination of eligibility for this incentive. If the Historical Commission does determine that this property is eligible, then the applicants can go through the special permit process. So we really wanted to make it known that you need to get a determination of eligibility by the Historical Commission to make sure that you do apply for this incentive before you go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So the findings required. So in this section, I've highlighted in bold the findings that already exist now. So if you were to go to the ZBA for a special permit, these are the findings that you would already have to meet. We're proposing through this bylaw to add 3 additional findings, and that's number 1 through 3. So the first section of this slide that we feel would be appropriate for the ZBA to have to look at in order to grant a special permit for these dimensional variations. So the first one, that the modification of standards and requirements authorized are necessary to maintain the eligible historic building on site which was originally constructed, or to relocate to another site deemed appropriate by the special permit granting authority as advised by the Historical Commission. Number 2, that the proposed renovation, repair, adaptive reuse, or removal preserves to the maximum extent feasible the historical and archaeological features, architectural features of the building. 3, failure to grant the special permit is likely to result in inappropriate use or physical modification or pursuit of a demolition permit. So we felt that those additional findings needed to be put in the bylaw in order to grant these flexibility and dimensional requirements. So conditions to be imposed. Obviously, since we're allowing dimensional variations, for the historic home, we really want to make sure that we are preserving the historic home. So this bylaw right now is proposing that a preservation restriction be placed on the home in order to receive the dimensional variations. So that is what this section talks about. We also wanted to close some of those loopholes that we were talking about before. And so in the second section, of this slide, we talk about if there in any event, if there is the loss or damage or full demolition of the historic structure such that the historic structure cannot be repaired, the owner may no longer take advantage of the lot coverage incentive or setback flexibility allowed under this bylaw. So basically, if for some reason the property is demolished, whether it be for damage, loss of the historic structure, the applicant would not be allowed to build back to what the flexibility was granted for. So they would have to build back to our own dimensional or requirements in our bylaw that are currently. So that is the end of the presentation. So I would be happy to answer any questions or comments. I know I kind of went through that quickly. So if you wanted me to go back to any section, I would be happy to do that.
Michelle, can you pick up raised hands?
I do see one.
Michelle?
Yes, Bob, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm getting an echo now.
I
Can you-
cannot see.
Can you let me know if? Hold on. If any hands are raised from the public? Or
I
if you're
don't-
in the public listening and you want to have a comment, raise your hand and Michelle will sort you out.
I do not see any hands raised at the moment.
All right. Let me just add a couple of comments to what Ally said. This is obviously the first time that this has been tried in Chatham, and there's some experience elsewhere, but this is in a way a work in progress. We'll only know if it's working out well after we try it and see if, for example, other unique type situations that we didn't think of come up, and we may need to do some revisions. But also recall that these are Ally described by the Zoning Board of Adjustment or the Zoning Board of Appeals, and that's where the discretion lies to make findings as to the merit of the request that's being made. Any comments by the commissioners?
Bob,
All right,
Bob,
yes.
this is Jane.
Jane.
As Ally knows, first of all, I want to thank Ally for an incredible amount of work that she did. And we've been at this for quite a while. And I'm very sorry that I missed the discussion of historic preservation restrictions in December. But she knows that I have, and Debbie Aikman have tried to work on historic preservations for Chatham since 2012 when we were both on CPC. And I am afraid I'm in favor of the proposal as you've described it, but I do have some concern about the requirement of a special historic preservation saying that the owner has to record at the Barnstable County Register of Deeds, this project or what the person proposes, because I'm afraid that will deter some people from voting for this. I have some examples.
Examples of hypothetical examples or real live ones?
Example happened, and this was a John Hawes house in West Chatham, 1732 is the date. It's across from Missouri's gas station near the West Chatham Rotary. It's a wonderful house, and the back is where he makes wooden furniture and tables. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? And
I can visualize it, yes.
the owner, we heard this at CPC, and the first owner applied for an application to help him restore his house because it is so historic and so wonderful. And he was even going to agree to put it on tour several times a year for the public. That is required for a CPC grant, as you know. And when he heard that he had to put a historic preservation restriction on it, he withdrew his application. It was a John Hawes homestead.
My screen's doing all kinds of stuff here. Okay, Jane, I understand. I guess that may be one of the things we'll have to see how it impacts applications. If we find that we're getting none for that stated reason, then obviously we're going to have to go back and rethink. We did have a previous model of this. I guess that's what you were discussing about our discussion in December, that was much more, I'll call it strict or onerous. And we made it less so, and just to meet that kind of objection. But it may not have gone far enough, but we still want to protect, obviously, the historical factors so that we don't allow too much to be able to be done. So anybody else on the board has anything to comment about Jane's comments or any others? I've got two letters that came in that I'll summarize with some additional points of view. One is from Bob Oliver, who was a historical commissioner for about 15 years. And he is commenting about the ability to have, proposes that there's an ability to have a guest house, in other words, a separate dwelling on the property as opposed to an expansion of the existing historic property, and would allow such an exception if there were at least 10,000 square feet of additional buildable land on the property. At the moment, you can have a guest house if there are 20,000 square feet of buildable upland. So he would be, and you have to have, it has to be occupied by a member of the family. So he would broaden the definition, or broaden the exception of a guest house for a guest house as a special incentive to what we have already. And secondly, we have, Michelle got an email yesterday from a Chip Walker who lives on Windmill Lane, which is down in Little Beach, in one of what was a Horn Cottage long ago, pointing out that that area down there has been the subject of any number of exceptions or special permits granted by the Zoning Board of Adjustment. He does seem to be concerned that they are not consistently being applied, and others got special permits when he did not. But that's just the vagaries of the zoning board and individual cases. However, he did make a recommendation that the bylaw be modified to include setbacks from private roads packed in, can make a big difference in the availability of this exception or to get a special permit. Again, that's something we'll have to look at as we go along. Any other thoughts before we close this process? Hopefully the public that is out there is in agreement with what we're doing. Could I get a motion to approve this draft bylaw and send it to the select board?
Bob, this is Don. I so moved.
Yes.
I so moved.
Is
That
there a
the
second?
historic, that,
Is there a second to this?
I'll second it, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. All right, all in favor, we'll have to do a roll call. Frank is not present. Steve? Steve? No, all right, we'll go down. Ben?
Yes.
Stephanie, are you with us yet? No. Jane?
Yes,
Don?
yes,
Sandy?
Yes.
Janet? Janet, you're muted.
A question, Bob. She and I are
Yep.
both voting alternates today
We're missing,
Until-
we're
until
missing
Steph
Frank.
shows up.
And
I vote
Stephanie?
yes. I vote yes.
Okay, thank you.
Janet.
And the chair votes yes. I think we've got a majority of the votes through that process and some unknowns. Okay, we will authorize Ally to move this along to the select board and perhaps have some further discussion. Ally, that's February 8th, is that correct?
Yes, I have a placeholder for the select board at their February 8th meeting to discuss these.
A week from this evening then. Okay, let's then move on down the agenda, which would be the minutes of our meeting on January 18th, I think. Yes. You've all had a copy of the minutes. Any changes, corrections? Any motion to approve?
So moved.
I second it, Jane.
Jane, you can't, you can't. Oh, yes, you can. I'm sorry.
She was virtual, remote. Okay, vote, take a roll call to vote in favor. Steve, you back with us yet? No. Ben,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
I'm in here.
Don,
Yes,
Sandy,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay, we're moving along. New business items. We did, or Chair Messina sent a number of community preservation grant proposals over to the Community Preservation Committee after our last meeting, and they're included in your packet. This is really for informational purposes at this point. Let me get back to my agenda. Okay. And in terms of the next steps for our commission, we have an option to have remote or hybrid meetings given up to us by the town. And Frank and my election as to this meeting was to do it remotely because we were in a poorer COVID situation than we had been for quite a while. What is the group's thinking on continuing to meet remotely like this or return to the hybrid model that we did for a while?
Don, this is Jane.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Bob. What am I thinking? I am continuing and I'm still a patient at Mass General Wound Clinic. And I'm hoping that the wound will be healed in March. But until it is, I think I need to participate remotely.
Okay.
It is getting better, but it is a slow process. I fell on my brother's steps on November 26th. And I've had surgery on my leg and I have an open wound to remove the hematoma. Still open.
Well, I understand your concern for sure. I also, although he's not here, Frank just had surgery a week ago, and I think that makes him more vulnerable than he was otherwise.
Okay.
Any other thoughts on whether we should return to hybrid or keep it remote for the interim? Ben, I see a hand. Ben, you're muted.
Ben?
Everybody's muted.
What do you think, Bob? What do you think?
I think we should remain remote, at least for the. I mean, we can make a decision on a meeting by meeting basis. It's just a difference in we're up to alerting the staff channel 18 what we're up to. So this is not a permanent type modification. It's just it's COVID severity dependent in my mind. And certainly if anybody is more vulnerable due to medical situations, then that impacts on it too. Now, there were a bunch of hands up from people that said they were muted. Sandy, you seem to be unmuted.
I am unmuted. I understand that we need to do the remote meetings because of COVID, but it really, I like the hybrid where you can, if you can't come, you can Zoom in or team in. And if you can, then we're together. There's something about us all being together. I think it makes us more cohesive. That's all. But I'm open to either, whatever works.
Bob, did you say we could do it meeting to meeting, make a decision?
Well,
I mean,
yes, I don't want to drive the Channel 18 crew nuts, but.
But in other words, if we decided now for the next meeting to do remote because of Frank's surgery and Jane's condition and who knows what the weather's going to be, we could do that, make a decision to say the next meeting is going to be remote. Does that make sense?
So that's my understanding. Yes. Dean, do you have any words of wisdom on this from the select board?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, the select board was asked by the Board of Health to consider imposing a virtual meeting mandate on all committees, and we discussed it and decided not to go that route, but to encourage all committees to meet virtually. But we understand that with respect particularly to regulatory committees like yours, like the Zoning Board, the Conservation Commission, which entail the presentation of large documentary evidence and material, we wanted to give those boards the option to meet in hybrid fashion if they chose to do that. But I think it's really up to you. We continue to meet as a select board virtually. We'll be meeting virtually, I'm assuming, next week when you present your bylaw proposal to us, and we would like to meet in person, but for the time being, we're going to hold off until the situation really calms down a little bit. So I think it's really up to you what you think works best for everyone, and that's really the comment that we offer to the committees.
And just to answer Janet's question, is this something that we can do on a meeting by meeting basis with good notice?
Yes, I think whatever you can work out with the IT staff, Channel 18, and whatever, I think is up to you. There's certainly no prescription that we're giving to any committee. I think you can take it meeting by meeting as you choose.
Okay. Anybody else? There were some hands. Don?
Yeah, I think we should, excuse me. I think we should meet remotely for the next meeting, and then look at what the conditions are of the COVID at that point and decide about our following meeting. I don't think we need to make a long-term decision today. I think week by week or by week is the way to go.
Okay, that makes sense to me, as I said. All right, well, why don't we do that? And absent some unexpected thing happening before February 15th, we'll plan to be remote at that time.
Bob?
Okay. All
Bob,
business.
this is Michelle. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So the only thing I would offer and just look for a little bit of consistency on is the public hearing notices that are posted for, whatever public hearings. If we have a regular agenda, it's easy enough to switch things up at the last minute. public hearing notices have to appear in the local paper 2 weeks in a row, not less than 14 days before the, the first hearing. So there is a little bit of, wiggle room on a regular agenda, but maybe not so much on a public hearing notice that is in the paper. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying if we could project out even a
Right.
month, then that would be a good thing in my world.
If you're talking about the 2 weeks, we should have published the one for February 15th.
Yes, but there are no public hearings on February 15th. I don't have any meetings, any public hearings on that day. So I did advertise it as a remote meeting, remote participation only. That's easily changed because, that the agenda is on My Town Government online. But a public hearing notice is a little bit different.
Right, okay, so we would have to be.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I do have a public hearing coming up for March 1st, which will be advertised. The deadline for the submission is tomorrow.
All right, group, we're gonna have to make a decision about March 5th or about February 15th then. As to how to advertise that. And my proposal, given what we know at this point, is to have it be remote or virtual.
Yeah.
I think she's saying March 1st, Bob, isn't Michelle, aren't you saying that you need to make a decision for the
Well,
March?
right. About March 1st, you're right. Thank you, Dean.
Yes. Thank you, Dean. Yes, March 1st, there is a public hearing that I will be advertising in the Chronicle next week. The notice goes to them this Friday. So it would be good if we could figure out as far in advance as March 1st so that I properly advertise.
Okay, thank you for that. Janet?
Maybe we should follow what the select board does. Maybe that's the best pattern to follow, since with the uncertainty. What do you think of that?
Well, I was thinking about that. Sometimes I disagree with the select board, but I think I can probably swallow that in this particular instance.
I mean, I love in person, you know that, but I think we have problems here. Yeah.
Right. As long as we can do the select board has to advertise every week, Michelle, right?
The select board, I believe
Okay.
so, but I would have to check with Shauna about that. I don't follow their advertising.
We have some advertising for liquor licenses, that sort of thing. Hearings, sometimes it really depends on the type of agenda item. But we're sort of I don't think we've ever taken a formal vote, but other than the most recent consensus we reached, but we're on pretty much a virtual continuum until the chair decides otherwise.
Okay, well, if it's up to the chair, I will take the heat for saying March 1st is going to be virtual too, so that Michelle can advertise it thus.
Yeah.
And we'll revisit that as necessary, I guess. We're going to have to be leading basically a month in advance in order to meet the advertising requirements.
Good.
Yes.
All right, let's go with that. Thank you all. The old business list on here may include some relevant pieces. Preservation awards. Sandy, are you dealing with that?
Bob?
Sandy?
Yeah, I am. We have a meeting scheduled for the 9th with Kevin and the people from the Historical Society and the Historical Commission. And actually, we've gotten 2 solid apps that Frank went over and he really liked, and they were for 66 Cross Street, which was submitted by Eastwood Companies, and 70 Seaview Street, which again was submitted by Eastwood Companies. And then SV Design sent one in that is for, I just have to get the 80 Main Street. So that would be the third one. And then there was one that Frank sent me that I took off the computer first thing this morning, and that would be for 364 Old Harbor Road, Chatham. And I need to discuss with Michelle and discuss with Frank prior to the meeting on the 9th. But if all are accepted, that would be 4 that we would discuss. And Frank's feeling on this is that he would really like to have this meeting, or he would like to have the event at the Atwood Barn, the old Atwood Barn, but that again is up for discussion. So that's where we are as of today.
Okay, that's progress.
Okay,
Sure.
and Bob, I had my hand up earlier and I don't mean to go back to it, but I just want to let you know that I am not here on the 15th for the meeting of the 15th.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes, you did tell me that before, right?
okay, great, thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the archaeological survey of the Chatham cemeteries, the Form Es. Steve, are you with us yet? Bill? Did see you earlier. What that is, I think Michelle put it in the packet, is an estimate from Craig Chartier to do the 42 cemeteries of varying sizes. And it would take, it's 15 Chatham cemeteries. And would take 42 work days. And the rate is $100 a day, so it's $4,200, which certainly seems like a bargain to me to get anybody to do work for $100 a day. But I don't know, without Steve's participation, what the next step to do with that is, whether we create a CPA grant or not, or grant request. So I'll have to review that with him, but is there sentiment one way or the other about proceeding with that for $4,200 to get the 15 cemeteries done? Any thoughts, anybody?
Bob, this is Don.
Yeah.
I think it's a worthwhile project, and a submission ought to be made to the CPA.
Okay, and would be, I think the drop dead date is February 15th, as I recall. Well, you would know better.
Actually, I think it was before this, but if not this year, then we can certainly do it for next year.
No, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is Ben. I agree with Don.
Bob, Bob, this is
Yes,
James.
Jen.
I'm in favor of it. We have requests, we on the CPC almost every year, and the deadline is January 15th.
No, that's what
It's
I thought
passed.
from
Yeah.
my time on CPC, but all right, we'll see what's going on, and if possible, we'll try and see if we can get it in this year. If not, been delayed for so long, I don't think another year is going to make much difference. But
Excuse me,
Okay.
this is Michelle.
yes,
I don't think there is a need for CPA money for this project. I think there is other funding that's available, but I will have to double check on that.
okay, that would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next item on here is the note, as I briefly alluded to, the townwide archaeological survey that we considered at our last meeting, and Frank had sent in a request or sent in that to community preservation. The Nickerson's family, the next one there, the CPA grant request was submitted for that. That's the work on the making the dig and that process, part of the National Register process. And the next item on the agenda is a different type thing. It is a request that Frank and Katie had made, and Ms. Donovan had made to town council for an opinion regarding the ability of the commission to fine people who were not living up to or had violated the conditions of the granting of approval to proceed with the building. We had one issue that I remember recently where what was supposed to be clapboard siding was replaced with shingles, and the building commissioner did issue a stop work order, and there was a question whether that was the limit of what could be done. And we wanted clarity about our ability and or the building commissioner's ability to find a miscreant on that for that. And town council has opined to the town manager that we can, if there's a specific determination of the commission under the provisions of Chapter 158 and it's violated, commission or the building commissioner have the authority to impose fines of $300 per day of violation, and if necessary, institute judicial proceedings to enjoin the process and impose penalties if the person does not pay the fines. So that is, I think, good news. Town council does caution that it seems to be that either or both the building commissioner and the commission can impose these fines. Maybe a little mixed, but we have to cooperate and collaborate in conjunction with the building commissioner about what we're going to be doing with regard to that. First of all, that's the building commissioner's job, if you will, and then to what extent the punishment will be applied. But we see then if we find somebody who's violating the condition, we can make a determination whether we should issue some fines or not. Another process for getting our awards or our determinations enforced. Demolition by neglect. I don't think anything's happened with that because Ally has obviously been busy doing other things in addition to the bylaw. National Register nomination, that's still lurking out there somewhere. Frank has been following up and being told that something's going to happen, but not yet. The chairman's report, this is something new again. We have a letter or notice from Jay Tallerman, who used to be town council, giving us information about a interpretation of the public body exception to quorums and attending meetings. It's rather, I think, an unusual situation, but it had to do with one board meeting and another board members coming virtually to a quorum of them. So let's say 4 people attended virtually a meeting of another government entity, and they were called on by the ones who convened the hearing to comment, and they did. They had not discussed that amongst themselves prior to that, supposedly, and the Division of Open Government found that that was a violation because that the quorum of them was participating, however indirectly. And I guess an example of that might be, let's say at the select board meeting next week, if 4 of us tuned in and were asked, how come you guys want this done or something like that, and 4 people opined, that could be a violation of the open government meeting law, even though we didn't discuss particularly what we were going to say or convene at all. So we need to be aware of that in such situations, as is coming up next week, that if a quorum is going to be there, it would have to be noticed as a meeting of us or a meeting of the Historical Commission, also along with the Board of Selectmen, Select Board, sorry. I do find it interesting that the acronym for this division of open government is DOG. So there's a paragraph called The Dog's Reasoning. So Frank and I will attempt to deal with that as those situations come up. Current demolition delays, I don't think there are any changes, although the old house at Shell Drive is being somewhat modified, or maintained, if you will, in shape, but going to be changed. But that's, as Frank has mentioned, that's kind of a victory for us. And the barn is in the process of being flaked and put away so it can be put back on or moved over to the Nickerson homestead. We also have, if I can find them, two hold on. Two administrative reviews to look at and ratify. I think Don and I reviewed both of them, or at least Don and I. The first one is 133 Queen Anne Road. Many of you are familiar with this property because it looks out over the oyster pond. And there is, if you go carefully, a structure behind it, back in the back of the driveway, which is a garage and a windmill recreation attached to it, which, according to the assessor's records, was built in 1958. I think I'm relatively convinced that that's at least not completely accurate. It's pretty close. And it did not look at me to be at all elderly. Don, I gather you shared that conclusion?
Absolutely, absolutely. It looks like a total reproduction of a windmill. It didn't look like anything that was historic to me.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve or ratify the determination that this building is not within our jurisdiction by virtue of age?
So moved, Ben.
Thank you, Van. Seconding?
Second, Jane.
All right, roll call. Chair votes yes. Steve, you still away? Ben, your vote?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes,
Janet?
Yes,
Okay, approved on that. The second one, 935 Old Queen Anne Road. You will recall, this is the house at the corner of
Sam Ryder.
Yeah, and they're doing a lot of work on it, and they were going to, they had going to put clapboard up, or we had approved clapboards, and they are having a great deal of trouble obtaining, I'm sorry, I've got it backwards. They have the clapboards. They want to change the siding from white standard shingles on the left, right, and back to clapboards on all four sides, because shingles are essentially unavailable, at least according to the contractor, and absurdly expensive if you could find them. And they don't know when they would be able to find them anyway. So again, I went out and looked, and I have no problem with there being clapboards instead of shingles. Clapboards on it now. So, Don, your thoughts?
I agree with you. Clapboards would look fine on the house.
Sandy, you live near there. Any thoughts?
I have watched them with that house. Okay, I'll go along with it.
Can I have a motion to that effect?
So moved, Ben.
Jane, second.
Okay, roll calling again. Chair votes yes. Ben, vote.
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes,
grudgingly. Janet?
yes. It's going to bear
Steve,
no resemblance to its old former self, I'll
I
tell you.
absolutely agree. I'm just horrified. But anyway, okay.
This is
Uh,
Steve. I'm
okay.
back. I'm finally at your meeting.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We missed you, Steve.
Well, I was there initially, but I could not hear anybody. I went through every machination in the world to try to get back on. And it turned out that I created my own Teams account. And every time I tried to go to Teams, I got my new account. It told me I did a great job with my first meeting. But I couldn't get you. So finally I said, let's go back. And I couldn't find, I know that Michelle was kind enough to send a message this morning about a connect, and somehow that got erased from my computer and my phone and my laptop. So here I am by phone.
The
Well,
joy of remote.
Steve, I have to say that I think I'm going through the same process. I'm on my on my iPad because my computer seems to think I'm a Microsoft team member. And case all these screens with all these instructions on it that tells you to download the app. I download the app and nothing happens. Anyway.
I have the same issue.
Well, I
Well,
may call you to see how you resolve it. Great lawyers are really good at this stuff, right?
Oh, of course. I used to have a staff do that for me, but no.
That's exactly.
Now I'm on my own.
That's what I had a paralegal for God's sake.
Exactly. Exactly.
Monomoy Theater property is the last item here. It's
Sandy's
moving
got her
along.
hand up.
Sandy?
Your hand's up, Sandy.
But you're muted.
I'm sorry. Just before we adjourn, I have a question to go back to. I just don't want us to adjourn before I get to ask Ali Sabatino something.
Okay, let me just finish the Monomoy Theater thing. It's
Okay.
Part of it has been approved by the planning board, so there is movement. I don't know if there's any real movement as to preserving the theater, the two theater buildings, but that's the update. Okay, Sandy, you're on. I don't know if Ali's still with us, though.
Ali, are you there?
Yep.
I am. Oh, thank you. The demolition by neglect and the property maintenance bylaw. You and Stephanie are working on that?
I have not started to work on it yet because we were concentrating on the preservation incentive bylaw.
Okay.
But I do believe that in the future, we will probably start to research that in more detail.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much, Ali.
No
I
problem.
missed that. Somehow or other we were sailing along and it just kept on. Thank you.
That is the agenda. Anybody else having any thoughts for the good of the Historical Commission?
How's Frank?
Frank.
I have not talked with Joan Ellen recently. Michelle, have you?
I spoke to them yesterday and Frank is progressing well.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he had a complicated back surgery is bad enough, but there was a complication involved too. So,
Oh, dear.
I hope he takes it easy for a while. But Joan Ellen did tell me he must be feeling better because he was giving orders all over the place. So, there you go. Okay, thanks for your cooperation, guys, in this.
I move that, this is Don, I move that we adjourn.
Presumably there's a second to that.
Jane, second.
All right, the chair votes yes. Steve, how do you think about it?
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
we are adjourned. Thank you all again. Hopefully we can do this a little more efficiently next time if I'm still in charge. Thanks for your help. And Ryan, thanks for your help.